Pod bay doors, Cal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Welcome to the Tame Aperture podcast, where we talk all things movies from first-time directors, indie, art house, and much, much more. Today on the podcast, we talk the 1986 film She's Gotta Have It from director Spike Lee. Sexually liberated Nola Darling resides in Brooklyn while juggling three different and eager suitors named Jamie, Greer, and Mars. Nola enjoys the best qualities of each man while not feeling entirely committed to a single one. And after their relationships with each man dismantled, Nola stays strong and confident in her philosophy. A woman can be a sexual being. She doesn't have to belong to a man, and perhaps shouldn't even wish for such a thing. She's Gotta Have It was filmed in 12 days on a budget of $175,000, catapulting Spike into the cinema ether and winning him a 1987 Independent Spirit Award. The film is 124 minutes long and is categorized as a comedy drama romance. The film would lay the groundwork for Spike to become one of the most prolific and independent voices in filmmaking. I'm Gabe Bienendahl, filmmaker, film instructor, and movie enthusiast, and I'm joined by veteran podcaster and editor Alan Martindale. And tonight with special guest and budding filmmaker joining us from Los Angeles, David. Hey, David, how the hell are you, man?
What's going on? Doing good.
Good. Alan, how you doing?
Dude, I'm doing good, man. I'm hanging in there. You know, this is fun. I've actually never seen a lot of Spike Lee's work, so this is actually kind of an introduction to me.
This is and everyone's hanging in there. Just before we started rolling, David was telling me he was 60 days in on this quarantine.
2-month mark, just passed it.
Are you going crazy yet? Are you pulling your hair out?
I think I did that maybe a couple weeks ago, and maybe it'll come back here in a week or two. Like, I'm just kind of riding the wave, man. But
dude,
it's all good right now.
That's all you can.
What are we pushing, Alan? Where are we at?
Oh, geez, we're close to that.
Good old state of Utah.
It was like March. I want to say March, like 11th or something. 19th, something like that. So what are we? A month and a half, 2 months, something like that.
Yeah. It's but here's the fortunate thing about all of it, right? Is that we have this technology. Like we can at least communicate this way. Can you imagine like 15 years ago? I mean, this wasn't quite like this. The ability just to sit down with someone. Like, I haven't seen David in over a year, probably.
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
But the ability to like sit down and talk is pretty cool. So I'm glad we were able to get on. And David, we're glad to have you on. So tell me a little bit about, so this was like a month ago, David and I were chatting through message, and he's like, cool, I saw you're doing a podcast. I said, yeah, you pick a movie. And so he picked a couple movies, and one of them was She's Gotta Have It. And then I had mistakenly told Alan that it was Do the Right Thing. So I mistakenly, yeah, I chose the wrong thing, mainly because I'm actually not as familiar with She's Gotta Have It. Now, I had seen the film before, but Do the Right Thing was one I've seen like half a dozen times. Whereas She's Gotta Have It, I only recall seeing it one time before I rewatched it for this. So David, tell me a little bit about that kind of inspiration, or like what about She's Gotta Have It sticks out for you? Just kind of lay it out for us.
Yeah. I don't know. It wasn't the first Spike Lee movie I saw either. Like, I saw Do the Right Thing. And when I was in high school, like Inside Man was coming out and like that. So I saw more of his later stuff, you know. And then as I got more closer to, moving to LA and getting more and more serious about film and studying film and directors, that's when I stumbled on it, or didn't stumble on it, but, found out about it or learned about it. And yeah.
You also gave me a recommendation on the book.
Yeah, the book.
Right. And so here's the deal. I tried to get it, and then I realized as I was putting it in the cart, it was like $80.
I think they're hard to come by. I don't know.
Really hard to come by.
Yeah. So I had seen the movie before, and then I was at a different school in LA, and I was just going to the library, grabbing stuff, and there was this beat up copy of it at the school's library, and I checked it out. And I had never heard of it, never seen it online, anything. And the book is basically, it's like a 3-part book. The first part is an interview, like a new magazine interview right before he's shooting School Days. So this was his second or third feature after Do the Right Thing, I think. And so it's a young Spike Lee interview. It's, like 50 pages long. It's just really cool, candid interview they had. And the second part of the book is his journal, his filmmaking journal, from like idea to shooting the film. So, and it's hundreds of pages of just daily journal entries, all of his brainstorming and ideas, and talking to his cast and trying to hunt down the money to make the movie and everything, just the entire filmmaking process. And it's insane. It's awesome. Like, it's really cool glimpse into what his world was like when he was trying to get it off the ground and coming off of like failures before. Like he didn't want it to be his first feature. It was never planned on being his first feature. He had another movie where the summer before that all the money fell through. And so you get to learn more about that through his journals and just what he's saying, his attitude about it. And then the last section of the book is the script. And of course, as you guys know, seeing the movie, like, it's unconventional storytelling structure. So it's really cool to see it on paper. You read about him talking about the script for months and months and months and months and months, and then finally seeing it on paper and just the way it's formatted and laid out. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it sounds like one that any kind of aspiring filmmaker should definitely try to get their hands on, as difficult as it may be. Like, I wanted to get it, and then I was like, oh geez, I couldn't get it. So
they had that one at the library, and then I found one on Amazon. It's pretty beat up, like old, but yeah, I've seen them on Amazon go anywhere $50 to $80. I don't know.
I just looked at Amazon. You can get a used copy for $130.
Wow.
Yeah, it was the one. Yeah, this was a few weeks ago. I swear it was right around 90. So somehow it's jumped even more since over the last month.
It's cool. And I was reading it when I was making my like final film school movie. And it's just kind of something cool to go to when you're going through the, similar process of making something from start to finish, and kind of say like, oh, this is how this guy, his attitude towards it was, and change the way I would write notes, change the way I'd journal, come up with ideas. I'd start kind of doing it the same way. Because a lot of it is he's just piping in real quick. Like, here's a quick idea. I got to do this, next thing, next day, so it's kind of scattered, but it's a huge resource for filmmakers for sure.
I also know, like, a little while back, he came out with one of the master classes Spike did. And one of his the titles to one of his first clips from the video is "Grab the camera and go." Like, that's basically how you make the film. You just go. And I've always loved that, because like the idea, you just try it. You try to get whatever it takes, whatever it is. Yeah. So I've always liked his attitude towards that. And it sounds like he did that a little bit with She's Gotta Have It, in a sense, at least in the beginning, some of the research I did, where he basically, like, this wasn't maybe his first film that he was going to try to complete, but he just basically found a way to do it. And it looks like in the start of it, he got a lot of grants, or at least a couple grants.
Yeah.
It looks like New York State Council on the Arts and the Jerome Foundation. And that's really hard. Like, I've never written a grant, but I've been part of a grant writing process for a documentary that we worked on. And it's hard. Like, grant writing is not easy. So I already applaud him in that sense, because writing a grant and getting $28,000 to start the film is pretty impressive.
And I think some of the grants too, like, he had other grants lined up that fell through in the middle of it because they were for the script that he was going to do. Like, it was already agreed that he was going to do this different movie called The Messenger, about a bike messenger. It's talked about in the book a lot, but a lot of these foundations, when they found out he was no longer doing that movie, they pulled the money too. So then he had to go find other grants and, apply to some of the major ones too. And it's crazy. Like, I can't imagine having that much weight on your shoulders, trying money wise, like really breathe down your neck, trying to finance a film. and trying to make something that's as creative and out of the box as they were doing, you know, like intentionally doing too,
right.
you know.
So that's so Alan, tell me a little bit on from your perspective. Looks like David's gone in depth and like looked into the background of how the film was put together and how much effort Spike put into it. But where do you sit on this particular film and maybe any other films that Spike's made over the course of the last 30 years, really?
Like I saw the first half of Do the Right Thing. And that's just because I got your message like when I was halfway through the movie.
That's because I fucked up.
Yeah. So that's literally the only introduction I've had to Spike Lee at all before this film. Obviously, I know who he is. I'm a huge basketball fan, so I know how culturally he's just obsessed with basketball and basketball players and Michael Jordan and of course the Knicks and getting in fights with.
Don't get us because I'm a huge basketball fan. And I know David is, so don't get us down too far a tangent.
We could just totally straight up change this podcast to a basketball podcast right now, seriously. So I mean, but that's about it. I knew who he was. I knew he's a very well-respected filmmaker, and it wasn't that I made any conscious decision not to see his films. I just never kind of got around to it, I guess. So this was really my introduction, and I got to say it's not quite what I expected. It's a lot more filmy than I expected, if that makes sense. Like, well, the thing my impression of Spike Lee was that it was a lot like Atmosphere. Like, you got to feel the city and you got to feel the characters. I didn't ever get the sense, I've never really heard people call him very artistic in what he does. It's more kind of about setting the atmosphere was my impression. And I got to tell you, like, I think artistically, I think he's got the chops. Obviously this is a first time feature. You can kind of feel that in the movie, but overall, I think you can see the filmmaker he's going to become later on.
No, that's pretty interesting. Because the film really dives deep into some like intriguing, important topics and questions. Like it brings up a lot of stuff, like all things that, like here we are, three white men that we can discuss in complete depth, right? Like, like woman voices, black voices. So like all things that on a maybe a personal level we're not familiar with. But I think what he does well for me as it gets into the film is makes it broader for everyone to at least attach some kind of, it resonates with somebody somewhere, even if you're not in that category, right? If you're not a woman and you're not black. And I think he does that pretty good. It is a little more than just atmosphere. I think he plays with characters pretty good.
Yeah, I found myself relating to actually a couple characters in this, and I was kind of surprised about that because we do come from two totally different worlds. But there were times when I was like, yeah, man, like I totally understand the frustration here, and we'll talk about that as we get into it. But that was something I was a little surprised about.
It does. There are elements to the movie where when I'm watching it, I do get that hint that it's a first-time filmmaker. I think you can always fall back to like some of the technical things that are going on that don't quite match up to maybe what you would see later with someone who's more experienced. Even himself, as he gets further along in his own portfolio, like you start to see his ability to tell the story a little more fluidly from the technical standpoint. So you always get that, right? Like when you watch a first filmmaker, you always kind of get a little bit of rudimentary vibe to what's happening from the technical side, whether that's the filming or the editing. But I think from a story and a character perspective, there's a lot of things going on here. I'd like to dive into a few of them. I like the ideological concept of Nola as a character. She's strong. She's powerful. She's a decision maker. She's not kicked around. I like that. That seems almost a little out of place for something in the mid 80s to be made. Like you don't see a lot of films that are going to have a strong female protagonist that are powerful, that are strong for her as an individual. So I like that. I think that resonates strong, and that concept resonates strong. Do you guys, when you watched it, even if that resonates, what was your overall impression of that character as a whole? Or kind of where did you fall in terms of the main protagonist, Nola?
I mean, I agree with a of what you said about her as a character. Like I really did like her too, but I think by the end of the film, I'm feeling like all the other guys in the movie too. I think any guy watching the movie just has like a little bit of heartbreak, like a damn, like I love this character, but no dude wins in this, like that's just something that everybody watching, just, feels like you're going to feel that. And I think the way that it ended is perfect for me. Like, I'm glad that it ended that way. I think if she would have went and ran in the arms of, Jamie or Mars or her, like she wouldn't be the same type of character that we're talking about. I don't think it would be something that people would talk about.
Yeah, because in the beginning of the film, she's basically like the visual or the image is like she's in bed alone, right? And it kind of ends that way too. She's in bed alone, and you've traveled through this entire journey. You've met her 3 lovers, right? And she's kind of, to me, when I watched it, I almost felt like what I would have seen in other movies. Like, she's kind of the man.
Yeah.
in the sense of what we might stereotypically consider that guy who is just playing the field. I like she was it was kind of the reciprocate of that, right? But one thing that I'm going to call out, it's not even problems, because I hate doing that. I really like doing like problems, but I love that concept of Nola as a character, and it resonates strong. I have to say, and I'm not trying to knock the actress too hard, Tracy Johns, I didn't feel like her performance attached itself to that character. So like the character as it's written and it plays out in the story, super strong, super powerful. But for some reason, her performance didn't match that for me.
That's one of the things in this movie that kind of it reminded me constantly throughout that this is definitely a first-time feature from a first-time director with a very low budget, because I really think the acting left a lot to be desired. It almost felt like stage acting at times, where they knew already what the reaction was going to be before, the scene partner delivered the dialogue. Like, it felt like it was coming. And that's totally fine. It's a first-time feature, but I agree. It kind of took me out of the story a little bit. And I would have liked to seen her be more forceful. Like, you saw some times with Greer where she did, and I like that. That's when I actually, because throughout the whole movie, I was kind of pissed off at her the whole time. Like, I'm like, dude, she's just leading these dudes on. This is bullshit. But as we kind of go forward and I see her get more forceful with Greer, I'm like, yeah, this is what she needs. I'd like to see more of that from her. I'd like to see her push that further.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's what I was alluding to, which is like, she doesn't have, in her performance, doesn't have the unapologetic, independent, I'm in your face, I'm doing what I want. And one of the things you said, Alan, that kind of stood out to me, which I thought about the same thing, which is it feels very theatrical in how it plays out. And the interaction between the characters and the performances feels very much like a play. Mm-hmm. And what you said about the anticipation of the responses, it's like, I don't know that they had, and David could probably allude to this because he knows the backstory a little more, but it's almost like they had time to rehearse and knew everything to the extent that how they were going to kind of pigeonhole themselves into what those responses might be.
Yeah. I think too, it probably has a lot to do with, there's a couple longer takes of dialogue. There's one, Nola sitting on the edge of the bed and it's like dawdling into her. And you can tell from her performance that like, that's probably the good take, like they're shooting on film 16 mil with no budget. Like they probably, like his hands are probably tied because he just has to use this take, but it happens periodically throughout the movie where there's a few times where it's like, okay, these guys probably didn't have like a whole lot of film, a whole lot of, the liberty to do so many takes, or that he, could do later on in his career, obviously. But yeah, it's definitely evident.
The 12 days shooting is pretty impressive. Where here's the thing, Alan and I had done a podcast a little while back, David, on kind of in some ways one of Spike Lee's mentors, one of his people that he looks up to, which is Martin Scorsese.
Mm-hmm.
And his first film, which Alan loves, by the way.
I cannot stand that movie.
It was very much pieced together and very convoluted and didn't entirely have a through line, and it felt very mixed, right? It didn't have a strong, powerful kind of overarching theme. And this has a little bit more than that. So I applaud him in the sense that he was at least in a 12 days, quick budgeted film, able to still string something together that had a little more resonance than even say Martin Scorsese's first film. Who's that knocking at the door?
But I will say this. I was a little worried there for a minute because it took a while for the story to really get going. I thought he was doing a Scorsese. Like I thought I was very worried that this was turning into Look Who's Knocking at My Door, because there's a lot of kind of artsy stuff thrown in there, and it felt a lot like Look Who's Knocking at My Door, where there's, random photos thrown in, and then you have this random dance performance kind of in the middle, and I was like, man, is this gonna turn? Is he? Because I know he loves Scorsese so much, and I was just worried. I was worried that he was gonna imitate that. But he did it. He pulled through.
I would say he definitely pulls through a lot stronger than Scorsese did on his first film.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. You can say that again.
If you haven't seen Look Who's Knocking at My Door, David, go watch that one and then make the comparison with She's Gotta Have It and see which one's better.
If you need something to help you fall asleep, go check that out. Like it's you would never believe Scorsese directed it. It's terrible. I hate it. I hate it so bad.
So in the storyline, we're basically following the story of this woman who has 3 lovers, this strong woman who doesn't really ideologically doesn't, I would say she just doesn't believe in monogamy. Is that unfair? I mean, she just doesn't, and is that an unfair way to kind of tackle the subject there? Or is that what it is?
I think, that's what it is.
Right. I mean, right or wrong or bad or good. I'm not defining either or. I'm just saying I think her approach is like she doesn't believe in that and she sticks to her guns that way. And so as the story goes on, we get introduced to all the different male characters. Tell me a little bit about, I want to get your guys' thoughts and perspective on the good and bad of these male characters in the story, because they're very much different, right? So each character is, they're not stereotypical, but they all have their own, they're independent in and of themselves, right? They all have their own kind of perspective. Tell me which one, because you guys were mentioning before, I'll put you on the spot maybe a little, which one resonates, or which one did you attach to as a viewer that felt either not the most like you, but like that felt like the one you could most relate to?
I think I could probably relate most to Jamie. Like I probably felt the most of the Jamie Nola storyline. I don't know. I can't really relate too much to the Greer and Mars side. I love Mars's character and I love their dynamic, but can't relate to much. Maybe I could have related at some point. Maybe a few years ago I could have related to the Mars, but I think this time around, this viewing, it was more Jamie.
I can see you as a bit of falling into that category of a Jamie, a sophisticated, smart, sincere person. Everything that I'm not, basically. I'm Mars, straight up.
Yeah, you got Mars.
Oh, by the way, speaking of Scorsese, I got to show you guys this real quick. Ready for this?
Oh my God. Gabe's got the mohawk going on.
Yeah, but guess what it is?
It's Taxi Driver.
Yeah, Travis Bickle, baby.
Yeah. Is that why you did it?
No, I just wanted to take it off because it was getting warm in my office. Alan, tell me about the characters of the 3 men. Like, what were your impressions of those 3, and what one did you like or dislike? Or
so, I mean, obviously, I'm most definitely a Greer. No, I'm just kidding. There's no way. We saw more of Jamie, so I felt like it was kind of being set up to have those 2 get together at the end. And so, obviously, I was kind of rooting for him. But, man, David, I agree with you. Like, Mars is a great character. When he's on screen, I'm having a good time. And even when Greer, I mean, you know me, I like the villains. I like horror movies. I like messed up stuff. even though I don't like Greer, when he's on screen, I'm more engaged in the film. Like there's something about him that's just, you just hate him so bad, and he's so vain and so arrogant, and it's just a show, but it's still you're way more engaged when he's on the screen. And same thing with Mars. Jamie was, he was kind of ho hum. I think performance kind of hurt that character a little bit too. I wasn't thrilled with the performance of the actor, but overall, you do root for Jamie, right? Like that's kind of who you're hoping will get her in the end.
Yeah, because you kind of it's that idea that I think you would consider him the nice guy. So
yeah, even though he was kind of a dick to her friend.
He was a little bit
to the lesbian.
He was
you can leave that.
He was a total dick.
He's a little jealous. He's got a little rage in him, and that portrays itself later. So what I mean is the nice guy. Initially, to me, when I see the three characters, I say Jamie is the nice guy. That changes.
Yeah, that does.
That changes dramatically, because there's a scene at the end, or near the end, I should say, that becomes completely deplorable. It's bad.
Yeah.
Right?
It gets dark. It gets really dark.
It's real dark.
It's really dark.
They always tend to get these dark twists in there. But I think what I did like about the characters is, I think you're right. I think Mars, for me, Mars is the most relatable. Like, I'm not saying I'm Mars by any means. I just mean he's one that I would relate to probably more than the other two. I think Greer is a bit of a pompous ass, right? So I don't really relate to that. And Jamie's a little soft for me. I'm not going to lie. But I think the characters are interesting. What I did like that Spike does in the film is, like, they're all successful in their own right, except for Mars. And that's okay. He's upcoming.
He's up and coming.
But Jamie's successful. Jamie's successful. Like, I guess he's an actor, or he's in the arts. Like he's kind of a thespian in a sense. But you would devise essentially that he might be successful in what he does. Greer is also kind of that entrepreneurial business. He's successful. I like that he built the characters that way. Mars, I would call him like an up and coming comedian. I don't know. He's aspiring, but I like to see all successful characters. I didn't like to see, sometimes, particularly in African-American cinema, you're going to see particular stereotypes. Right there, it's going to be the complete struggle. It's going to be the projects, the tough things that happen. Right, all which are true, but I like that he didn't really shed a light on a lot of that, and you just kind of perspectively saw the characters go through this personal story as they did it together. Right. Yeah, I don't know. I like that.
I agree, and they were so different. So Nola definitely does not have a type. Like, she does not at all. It almost feels like she's just collecting dudes. And it's almost like she's collecting guys who will chase after her. Because as soon as they stop chasing her, that's when she kind of chases back a little bit. So to me, that's kind of what she's all about. But I agree. And my favorite line from Mars in the whole movie is when his insult to Greer is that he's a Celtics fan. Because I can relate to that so much.
That's what you would say to me, Alan?
That's what I'd say to you. Yeah, exactly. We got too many Celtics fans here in Salt Lake. It's ridiculous.
I got a feeling me and Spike wouldn't be friends because
you love Larry Bird.
I'm a Jazz guy.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I'm a Jazz guy because I'm from Utah, but my follow-up team is Boston, so we're probably not buddies.
Definitely not buddies.
Probably not.
Albeit, though, I might have an edge on Chicago. He might hate the Bulls more than the Celtics.
Maybe.
Probably.
Maybe.
Look,
he might hate the Knicks more than both of them right now too.
Oh, that's probably true.
Yeah,
I think nobody can like the Knicks at this point in the game.
Yeah.
But I like the characters. Look, you have an all black cast, you have all black stories, and I think that's a good perspective for anyone. It's different, right? For someone like myself, it lends a unique storytelling perspective on things that are not my experience. So that's good. And I like that he does that. I think that I want to ask you each a question. What's the most captivating or the best scene in the film for you that stood out as you watched it that really resonated or didn't resonate and was really hard to watch or whatever it might be? What's the best scene in the movie if you have to choose one?
Dave, we'll start with
David?
you if you got one.
I don't know if one in particular, like, to me, it felt like the three guys each had one scene, like defining scene for each of them. And I'm trying to pick out which one to me was like the one. I love Mars's intro, just the long shot of him coming down on the bike with the music and then the quick inserts. It's awesome. Like it's
the Jordans.
It turns things on too. It's like, all right, who is this guy? Let's go. And then Jamie's, like the near rape scene, his dark scene is obviously a huge, powerful scene in the movie. And for Greer, I think Greer's was when he's folding his clothes and it's taking a super long time. They're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Like it's almost too drawn out, but it's enough to like, I don't know. It just hooked me too for that character. So I'll give you 3. I don't know which one out of those ones, but
those are all pretty good.
The Mars intro though is still, to me, just,
it's great. I mean, that's
super cool sequence.
That's something I've never even seen this film, and I know about that shot because it's it's super famous. It's Mars Blackman, I agree. I forgot for Greer's intro. I was gonna say Greer's intro for him was my favorite, but when he's sitting in the car and he's just talking about how much Nola worshipped him and everything. But I forgot about the part where he's folding all his clothes. Like that's pretty funny. I like that a lot. I think for me, the best scene or my favorite scene, I don't know if it's the best, is Thanksgiving. I love that because it was the first time you see all 3 of those dudes together and they're all so pathetic. I felt so bad for them. Like I hurt for them, but I also was like, have some self-respect. Someone's got to walk out of that room. And then especially at the end where they're all lying around, it's just like made me cringe. And it's just like, have a little self-respect, guys. Like, come on, get out of there. Like, don't put yourself through this. Don't subject yourself to this.
Yeah, that scene was interesting. I think if I was to choose one, that's actually the one I was going with too, Alan. And the reason is because I find it intriguing and frustrating that the 3 of them are in the same room and they're compatible. They're talking and Mars is giving Greer a little bit of hell, which is funny. And the way he kind of chides in on him and starts razzing him a little bit. But I thought that was, I thought the same thing. Like, can one of you guys just stand up and get the hell out of there?
I honestly thought Jamie was going to leave at any moment. Like, I thought he's the one with the most self-respect that he's gonna bail at some point, but he never did. He was the one. Like, he was the one I think both Greer and Mars could relate to a little bit. They both had a little bonding thing with him, I think.
Yeah. The other scene, they did. I think it's easy to, like we talked about, to kind of jump into Mars' character, and whether you relate to him, he's fun and energetic to watch. So Mars is always an easy, like it's an easy drink.
Oh yeah. Well, and Spike Lee did a great job with that character too. You got to give him credit, like directing yourself and playing that flamboyant of a character. And I loved it. I thought he did a great job.
Yeah. Like getting into that, one thing that stood out to me, and we'll get into that in just a second because we're talking about him writing, producing, directing, editing, starring. We'll get into that in just a second. One other scene that stood out to me, it may not be the best film, and this may seem a bit strange, but when Nola calls Jamie on the phone after she's been thinking about Jamie, and she calls him and says it's an emergency, you need to come over now. But here's the thing about the scene, and I don't mean the subsequent scene. I loved, and I don't know why, Jamie's travel from him at his apartment to her apartment, which is basically a montage of photos that are out of focus and overexposed or underexposed of him going through the subway.
Yeah.
I don't know why, mixed with that jazz music or that little bit of flair to it, the background music, I loved that sequence.
And I think she says like, that was fast, like right after, you know, like it's just quick picture, then that was quick, you know, it's right back into the movie.
I don't know why because I think it'd be easy to like have that pull you out of the film, but for whatever reason it didn't pull me out. And I also loved that Spike's dad was the composer of that score as well, which was what I thought was really cool. So that scene, for some reason, that little montage just stood out to me. The subsequent scene after is, of course, Jamie essentially rapes Nola. That's a weird, what was that change of that character? Because when we were talking about this or alluding to it a little before, like up until that point, you're kind of siding with Jamie, at least as the nice guy and kind of the guy that's a little more sincere and considerate towards women. And then all of a sudden that light switches and he turns into a bit of a monster. What was that about?
It was a little scary there. I almost wonder what he's trying to say about men, because it almost felt like Jamie just had enough. Like he'd been put through the ringer with this girl. He obviously really cares about her. The other two, I'm not so sure they care about her as much as they think they do. I think they just want to win, especially Greer. But Jamie seems to really care about her, and it's almost like he was fed up and he just lost his mind. And I don't know if Spike Lee is saying that that's a potential in all men, or I don't know what it was. Because even after the fact, Jamie was clearly embarrassed by it. Like in a later scene when they're in the park, he's clearly embarrassed by what happened. And I think he's ashamed of himself. So I don't really understand. It didn't fit the character either before or after. But I am glad that Spike gave him some remorse later on, because if he didn't have that remorse, I don't know. I think it's almost a more, just kind of a disgusting movie at that point. Like I think we really need that from one of the protagonists.
No, that's what I wanted to get your perspective on that, because when his patience runs thin, and rightfully, it's a weird thing, because in some ways you're I don't want to say sympathetic, but you're understanding to the point that he's tried to give her a genuine relationship all along, and she's constantly pushed him off and off and off and off again. And so there is that relatability. I think any red-blooded male or any male that's had a relationship can look at it and say, well, if someone strings you along for so long, there's a frustration. Now, it wouldn't lead to that serious of an action, but I think there's an interesting sympathetic nature to that character that I don't think entirely diminishes at that point. I think the remorse plays well later, and you still kind of, as violent as it is, and as much as I would, of course, don't condone it, like there's still something to the character there later on when he shows that he did the wrong, or feels kind of did the wrong thing, right?
Yeah. And I think too, like once that scene happens too, like he can know there's no longer going to be an ending where he gets her in the end or wins, quote unquote,
right.
Like once that has happened, that line has been crossed, that bond has been broken, whether it's said on screen by either of the characters or not, whether it's remorse or actually verbalizing it, like we as an audience, just the subtextually are like, he can't win now. Like this won't end happily for the two of them.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And it kind of, go ahead.
In the journals too, like that scene, the way that it was originally written was that he starts like having really rough sex with her and she starts to like it. Like originally, like she starts to like it and enjoy it, and that makes him stop and just say like, what the hell, and leave. So he changed it to what it is now. I don't know. Like, I don't know what maybe his notes he was getting or what to have it go that way. But
I mean, that's interesting though, because if he originally planned for it to go that way, then we continue to sympathize even more with Jamie, whereas the way he went, we kind of pull our emotion off of him because we're not backing him up as much as we were before. So that's interesting.
It's like very important for Nola to be the main focal point of the movie too, you know, for it to be her story and to be about her change and her, you know, her life, you know. So I think going with what he went with and having it be the way that it is kind of puts that stamp on there.
Yeah, and that's the one thing, and I was kind of putting in my notes, was like, I possibly would have wanted more perspective from Nola. Like, I felt like one thing is kind of intriguing, or I thought was as well done as each of the male characters were for who they were for the story. I thought that it almost did risk a little bit of convolution. So we talked about Scorsese's film kind of being all over the place, his first film. And this doesn't quite do that, but it almost becomes too convoluted with all the storylines. I would have liked to have seen a lot more perspective from Nola directly all the way through the film.
Yeah.
And not had so many of the fourth wall breaks where Mars talks about who Nola is and Jamie talks about who Nola is. I think they're well done, and I think they're creatively done for a fourth wall break, but I would have liked to see her more expressive and more perspective from her versus the men, to be honest.
If I'm not mistaken, we only get her breaking the fourth wall at the beginning and the end, right? Like she doesn't do it at all in the middle.
And David, correct me if I'm wrong, or Alan, does she go to a therapy session?
Yeah, she does.
And so there's a little there, but I don't know how poignant it is or how strong.
And we get more like from her therapist to the camera, fourth wall too. So, but she does, it's kind of funny. I can't remember if it's the beginning, very beginning, or the very end. She says like, this is, something along the lines of like, this is what a story from all the people who think they know Nola Darling. So she kind of tells you like, you're not going to get my side of it. You're going to get everybody else's side of it. And the other like big inspiration that, you know, from first Spike Lee for this movie was Rashomon, Kurosawa's movie. Like he's a huge Kurosawa fan of that movie in particular, which is people on trial, you know, like it's confessionals. You're not getting the full story. You're getting just sections of the story from different people. And I didn't know when I first saw this movie, I didn't know the connection there until later. I read the book and then rewatched it, and now it's like, holy shit, like this is definitely very Kurosawa in structure and of like how the story is being told. And but yeah, I wish too that there was a little bit more Nola.
Well, when you say it that way, I think I think that's a pretty interesting like side piece to the history of it is the pull from Kurosawa. And the interesting viewpoints of all, you know, and if you're right. I mean, the idea that at the beginning she does say, hey, this is not my story, or I'm not the one that's going to be telling it in full.
Right.
But I think I still think I would have liked to have like her opinion a little stronger throughout.
Yeah. It almost felt like the center point really became the side. I don't want to call them side characters, the supporting cast, I should say. It kind of felt like it became about those three guys, and we're not really talking about Nola anymore. We're talking about their feud, which honestly I kind of feel is more interesting. But if you're gonna have her be the center, you know, the central protagonist, I would like to see more of her story, like more of her.
Right.
I mean, like we said before, I'd like to see her be more forceful, more. You know, it's clear she's independent. I want to see her really just ensure that everyone knows how independent she is.
Absolutely. Let's talk real quickly about the color sequence, and maybe David can shed some light on this. What the hell was the color sequence doing in this movie?
Yeah.
It made no sense to me. I think I had ideas of what it meant, but the only thing that I could think of course, is if you were shooting on film, of course, black and white would be cheaper than color film. But why just the one color sequence? I don't understand it. Did you have any insight on that one,
David? Before you go, I want to make sure I understood it right. They were doing a Wizard of Oz thing to get into this, right? Like there's no place like home thing, and then it goes to color. I don't know if they were.
So I got that. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I don't know if it's an homage. I don't know. So yeah, I don't know if you have insight on that. But I was the whole time. I was fighting the urge to fast forward through that sequence.
And I'll let David go. One more thing. That was, I got the homage, and it also felt very, of course, musical. So there's a musical element to it, like the classical Hollywood musicals from the 50s, and it felt like that. And then of course the turn to color, like the Wizard of Oz. I got those kind of homages in there, but sometimes homages don't work.
Right. Yeah. I think for it being in color, like a reason for it being in color, I don't know if there's something behind it, like a hidden meaning or something that he wants to say by putting it in color. From like everything that I've read and just watching, I think it's just between him and his DP, like, hey, I think we should shoot this sequence in color. I know they weren't gonna shoot it in black and white like the whole movie. There was something that Ernest Dickerson was like, hey, we should shoot this in black and white, because it was just kind of something that they collaborated on. I know he wanted like the ruby slippers to be in color. Like that was something that he kind of, since he's shooting the movie in black and white, he's not gonna be able to have the slippers in back in color or be in color. So wanted to do some sort of color blast instead. But I don't know what the scene is there technically for. Like, to me, if I had to guess, I would think this is like Spike Lee. Like, you gotta imagine like what 21-year-old Spike Lee, like this is his idea of like the perfect dream date that he probably would love to take someone on, maybe. Like, I don't know. I know his family's very into music. His dad has been a musician forever and composing, and so a lot of people playing the instruments are friends of his dad or bands and people he knows around Brooklyn that he's grown up with and stuff. So I think it was just something fun that he really wanted to do. I don't know if it's important or drives the story forward or does those things, but I really don't know.
I think it's a distraction. I think what happened is he got an extra grant.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, we got another 10 grand. Let's shoot this part in color because we can process
so
and
much
develop
coverage
in color.
too.
Yeah,
there's so much coverage in that scene, like from every angle. It was like, where did they get all this colored film reel?
And meanwhile,
that's where my mind goes is the producer mindset of like, it's going to cost me 3 times as much if I shoot this in color versus, and I try to process and develop in color than black and white. So he must have got an extra grant. That's what I think.
Well, and meanwhile, they could have used a lot more coverage for some of the dialogue. Like, I understand,
right,
the instinct of wanting to have long takes, but there's sometimes like, let's just change it up a little bit. Just give me a back and forth. Like, just give me a talking heads edit, please. It's a little too long at times.
Yeah, there's some editorial things there. And that goes back to those technical things that we were excusing in the beginning. Like, they're just going to be there as a first-time filmmaker because, like you said, Alan, they're not going to have the coverage necessary. And so editorially, they're not going to have the options. And I agree. Maybe we could have spent some money on getting additional coverage in other areas. Yeah. But it's all a moot point anyway. It doesn't matter, but it's still fun to talk about. But tell me, I like Spike's vision. Ultimately, like, I like his vision. I like his unique value that he places on the film as a precursor to Do the Right Thing, which is one I'm more familiar with. Like, even in that sophomore effort that of Do the Right Thing, man, he grew a lot in that time frame. Because if you watch something, we talk about coverage and like watch Do the Right Thing, and there's coverage everywhere. Like, it's just, there's low angle, high angle, side profiles. It's all over the place. I think his growth as a filmmaker is pretty significant in such a short period of time. So he definitely learned a lot from She's Gotta Have It, as you would expect, because, and we were alluding to this, he was everything. The writer, the director. They didn't have a first AD. He was the first AD. He was He pulled his sister in to be one of the characters. He pulled his dad to do the composing. So everything that it took, I love that determination and his ability to like stick to what he knows and complete a vision all the way through. And so I applaud him for that. And still, like, even if his vision is who he is as a African American growing up in Brooklyn, like, he still makes it appealing for a larger audience that doesn't have that same experience. And I like that he did that. Whether that's his intention or not, that's how I felt when I walked out. And I like that he shed light on certain perspectives and certain lives of these characters. So applause to him for coming up with the determination to even get a movie made in the first place, and then second place to actually get the success that he did. Tell me a little bit about, we'll kind of start slowly rounding it out here, but David, tell me your final summation, and then give me a rating. This is how we do it. We're basically like 1 through 10, and then we attach some kind of prop to the end of that. So, 8.5 Air Jordans. Give me a summation of the film, what you think about Spike and She's Gotta Have It, and then give me a rating 1 to 10.
I think that the movie itself, for first-time filmmakers, for young filmmakers, for people that are getting ready to think about making movies, I think it's something that people should see, definitely. And I would suggest the book as well, even if it's something you don't think will be appealing to you, whether, you don't think you're the right audience for it or whatever. It's still just something I think is important for filmmakers to see and to watch. I actually love the cinematography in it too, just from my background, loving black and white street photography. It has that high contrasty stuff in there, and I really dig it. And Spike Lee, like, I'm not a huge fanboy by any means, but I think he has in his library, there's some super important movies and some movies that I always go back to. Mo Better Blues, the Denzel Washington movie. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but that's a movie too where I confidently think that the first, 10, 13 minutes of that movie is like the best character introduction that I've ever seen in a feature film. So, and that was shortly after this, it was within his first 5 movies. Like you said, he really kind of got a grasp on his vision pretty quickly, like once he got the wheels going. So for this one, though, She's Gotta Have It, I would give it a, 7.8. 7.8 Air Jordans. Yeah.
Okay. And
Jordans.
You got the fitting Nike, or the fitting Knicks hat on. Excuse me.
Yep. Just for today.
Yeah. So you going with the 7.8?
7.8, I think.
Alan, is that high?
For me, that's high. I don't. Although the last couple movies we've done, I've gone pretty high, but for me, that's high. I'm a mean grader, man. It's a good thing I'm not a teacher, because I would be ruthless.
I'm soft. David knows I'm soft. I'm just kidding. 7.8 is good. That's fair. Alan, give me a summary of Spike and the film, and then give me a rating 1 to 10. Okay, so I watched, like I said, the first half of Do the Right Thing. That's like the movie that people really love of his, from what I can tell. I actually like this more than at least the first half of Do the Right Thing. I didn't finish it. I am going to go back and finish it, but I enjoyed it a lot more. There are some things that kind of took me out of it. I had no idea that all 3 of these dudes were dating her at the same time until later on in the movie. Like, I thought he was doing like a Tarantino type thing, like a non-linear storytelling. So like when she would be on a date with Greer, I thought they were jumping back in time, and I thought that the Jamie thing was like the person she's dating in the present. So that was a little confusing when it all kind of came together. Again, some of the technical stuff we talked about kind of took me out of it. There's some weird edits in here where he repeats the same shot back to back for some reason. I'm not quite sure why.
And then the color sequence kind of took me out of it. But other than that, I love the story. I love the characters. I'd love to see a little bit better acting, but I understand, first time feature, you go with who you got and who will take the money. And so I totally understand that. Overall, I think I'm going to go with a 6.7, and I'm going to cheat this one because this is from Do the Right Thing. A 6.7 scuffed $108 Nike Air Jordans. $100, but $8 with tax. 6.7 of those.
Those are not just by the way, those are not just anybody's Air Jordans. Those are Gustavo Fring's Air Jordans from Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
That's
really?
Giancarlo Esposito, the actor.
There's a lot of
Oh,
people
it is. You're
too.
Right. Holy shit. I didn't even notice that.
It's Gustavo Fring. The only reason I know that is because I'm a mad Breaking Bad fan. And as I was rewatching it like you last week, I was like, oh shit, that's Giancarlo Esposito.
I knew he looked familiar, but man, he does not. Man, he's got a lot of range. I'll just say that as an actor. Wow.
I love that scene though. That scene's hilarious.
Oh, it's great.
It's funny.
And of course, the guy's wearing a Larry Bird shirt who scuffs his Jordans. It's the best. It's my favorite.
I'll kind of give a little summary. I wanted to dive into just a couple pieces of trivia. And David, if you have additional stuff, throw it in there because you've read the book and you're more familiar with it. I thought this was interesting. There was a reflection by Spike a few years back, and he said if I was able to have any do-overs, he would take out the scene, the rape scene with Jamie. He'd take it out of the film.
Interesting.
And his quote said, "It made light of rape, and that's one thing that I would take back. I was immature, and I hate that I did not view rape as the vile act that it is." So I don't know.
Here's my question.
If he was just plugging, She's Got to Have It, the Netflix series, to try to soften the blow. But he didn't. He wanted to. He said he would have taken that back or edited out that's.
Well, what do you guys think?
So how do you feel about that?
Well, narratively,
we had a discussion on it.
Narratively, what do you guys think? I mean, to me, I think it fits the story very well. I mean, it's a little out of character for Jamie, but it is a manifestation of him boiling over with this frustration. Again, very deplorable. But to me, like David, I think you said it perfectly when you said it makes it okay that she doesn't get back with Jamie. Like it's actually kind of, it's good that that in the end she leaves him.
Yeah, I would agree too. Like, I don't know what would go in place of it, but I understand where he's coming from. Like I'm sure he sees that now and realizes, okay, maybe that was a little too much, especially because how we all felt. We all liked that character up until that point. That kind of changes the tide of everything. So I can see why he would regret it or kind of want that back. But yeah. So
another thing, because there are elements to the film that, it's very overtly sexual, right? And here's something interesting that I found on it's just easy research, but I did find it interesting because the Criterion Collection, Alan. So David, unknowingly, I've selected like 4 films that are part of the Criterion Collection over the last few podcasts. And David, you have chosen also a film that's part of the Criterion Collection because in the mid-90s, the Criterion Collection released the film on Laserdisc. So they don't have rights now to the DVD, but in its own way, She's Gotta Have It is part of the Criterion Collection.
There we go. On Laserdisc.
On Laserdisc only, not DVD. Not
She's
Criterion.
Gotta Have It, Twister, and whatever what other Laserdisc there was. Independence Day.
Apollo 13, I know that. Do you guys remember when Laserdisc came out and it was like, this is going to be the future? And like all my friends' dads went out and bought these huge Laserdisc. It's like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life.
We had like the rich family member that had the Laserdisc.
And then you'd have to, halfway through, you'd have to flip it over like a record.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, man.
You're like, hold on, guys, we're intermission here.
Yeah, I think what was that? The Right Stuff, that movie about launching people into space. I think my dad, like, we were way late on the Laserdisc thing, like right when it was going out, and because it was finally affordable. My dad,
That's when they're cheap, yeah.
yeah, exactly. It was like super cheap, and my dad got it, and The Right Stuff had like 4 discs. So it was, I mean, it was just like a CD box set or something, but you have to flip it over. So it took like, to watch, you can just sit down and watch a movie. You had to do some work to do it, man. You got to get off the couch. You got to stumble over to the Laserdisc. You got to flip it open, turn it over. It's ridiculous.
No one wants to go turn over a Laserdisc when it's hitting the climax of the second act.
Exactly.
No one wants to do that.
Yeah.
The reason I
Not
bring
the
it up,
right
though, is
stuff.
because the Laserdisc is the only release of the film that has an NC-17 rating.
Ooh.
And that's the director's cut. So that's Spike's cut. And that's including sexual content that was not cut to obtain an R rating, because what had happened that I saw a quick interview with Spike that the MPAA actually called him while it was in theaters and said, you got to cut out a couple pieces of this film to bring it down to an R rating. So this was after it had been released in like one theater somewhere in New York. So anyway, Criterion Collection tie-in, Laserdisc tie-in. There you go. Director's cut. 1986 Cannes Film Festival, Award of the Youth, foreign film, Spike Lee won. So pretty big award to have won as a young filmmaker. Probably one of the biggest awards you can get. 1986 Los Angeles Film Critics Award, also won, New Generation Award. So he came out hot. Like, this is a first-time feature, and he was 1987 Independent Spirit Awards, won. So he was clean and slate on this film. And alluding to what I said earlier, I mean, I think that's what makes him kind of one of the most prolific and independent voices, particularly like in independent filmmaking. And I'm not a fanboy either. I'm not out there. I haven't even seen all of his work, right? I've probably seen like a half a dozen of the however many films he's even made. I don't know off the top of my head. But going in and watching this again, talking it through with you guys, looking at some of the other critics as well, and some of the other review aggregators, Rotten Tomatoes got it at 91%. So kind of that's pretty high.
That's really high. That's really high.
And then IMDb comes in at 6.7 out of 10 with about 9,500 reviews.
That's a big difference.
Yeah. There's a lot of IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. They're usually kind of close, but it seems like movies like this kind of have that huge.
And there is a disparity, but also just to the 91%, and
that's the critics,
probably
right?
To be clear, it's the critical percent, right? And that's what we're going for. But the audience scores it at a 73. So take it for what it's worth. And I'm not overly hyped on ratings and stuff, although I do like to kind of gauge have a rating out there. So, man, a lot of things going on in the film. I think that ultimately, like I said, I like his vision and I like the ultimate characters. As a first-time filmmaker, I love that he put all the work in that he did. His mantra of just like grab a camera and go, like I love that. And pretty intriguing characters, mostly all the way through. I agree, David. I think the cinematography is fun to watch. Like, it's not perfect, and that's kind of what makes it good in some sense. Like, I like sometimes the imperfections of things.
One of my favorite parts in this movie is actually, I shouldn't say one of my favorite parts, but it is the best part of the color sequence is at the end when she's blowing out the candle. And you can tell it's a blown take because the candle pops back up. It's one of those relighting candles. And she falls down, starts laughing. You hear other people laughing off screen. And Jamie just looks right dead on at the camera. And it was like it was a fun little moment. And I like that he kept that in there.
Yeah, there was some interesting. There was a keep there, and then also when Greer gets in the bed with her after folding all his clothes, and there's about. I like editorially being an editor, that being my main trade. I liked although I thought the rhythm was off a little.
Yeah.
But why? See,
but
I didn't like that
the jump
one.
cuts.
I
like the jump cuts and the double up on one take. He does the Greer getting in bed and then replays Greer getting in bed again.
But why though? Why did he do it there?
Some like, I don't know.
There
was some. Oh, go ahead.
No, you got it.
I was just gonna say there was some tasty L cuts and J cuts too with audio where you'd hear Mars talking, but it's on Jamie by himself, and then into the next scene. Like, he had a very intuitive way of editing, and then that stuff where we're saying, but why? Like, he was just doing what he wanted to do, like slicing and dicing film and like having fun with it, which is cool to watch, like.
Yeah.
And I'm sure all these first time filmmakers have maybe not journals and stuff, but they probably went through put in that same type of work, did a lot of these things that he did, but the only difference is like they didn't write a book about it and they don't talk about it, like he did do those things. And his filmmaking, to me, he does what he wants to do. Like, he does whatever he wants to do for the audience that he wants it to go to, like, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's no compromises in what he wants to do. And I agree with you, David.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what is intriguing to me. And even if the imperfections are there, or we ask ourselves why, or why would you do that cut, or why would you leave that? What I think is actually the end of the take, they just didn't yell cut, what you're alluding to, Alan, with the candle. He just left it in for the shit of it. He's like, I'll just leave it in because I can, and I'm not going to compromise what I think is best for this story. That part you have to applaud and you have to love. I think
there was one other scene.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. There's a scene that we were talking about earlier with Greer in the car, where he pulls up in the nice car and then just starts talking to the camera. I really love that scene too. But that scene starts where it's like the camera operator is just walking a camera out into a driveway, just boom, 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 and sits up next to the car. And then it's a great scene, like we don't even notice the fact that it looks like the guy's just kind of toting this camera along, these dirty dolly shots that aren't even really dolly shots. Like, I don't know. There's something cool about it. Something cool about watching a good scene play out with maybe not traditional or polished camera moves or.
Yeah, because we know it can go one of two ways. It can go really bad, or it can be acceptable. And in his case, it's acceptable.
It adds to the charm of the film.
What's that?
It adds to the charm of the film.
Exactly. One thing I wanted to quote real quick, and then I'm going to throw my score at you, my rating. New York Times wrote that this film, along with Jim Jarmusch's Stranger Than Paradise, brought in the American independent film movement of the 80s and was groundbreaking film for African-American filmmakers and a welcome change in the representation of blacks in American cinema, depicting men and women of color not as pimps and whores, but as intelligent, upscale urbanites. So I like that. That was good. That was from the New York Times. So overall, like 12 days to shoot this thing, 175,000. Well, I mean, it's there. I mean, there's pieces to it. Is it that thing where you're going to watch on a constant basis? Not for me, but I would rewatch it. And so that's oftentimes the delineator for me is like, would I rewatch this movie, or would I just kind of let it float off into space? And for me, I would rewatch this film. If I wouldn't have a problem rewatching it. I'm going to come in. So David, you had a 7.8.
7.8.
Alan, you had a 6.7.
6.7.
You guys might hate me on this one.
You're going high, aren't you? I know you're going high.
No.
Oh, you're going low.
Look, I'm going to come in a little bit hard and a little bit harsh. I was going to go a 6.5. I go a 6.5, 3 men and a lady. Yeah, 6.5 is where I'm going to come in on this. 6. But I agree with David is that anybody aspiring and anybody who loves film, like they should watch the movie, like point blank period. You should watch the movie for all those things that we alluded to and discussed, which is you're going to learn from it. I love the idea that there's a book. I haven't read it. I also think that's pretty cool because most of the time you don't get that inside perspective from filmmakers in that depth. So I'm intrigued to find this book first and not have to pay
it's a collector's item now.
My child's college tuition for it.
Yeah.
I know. I had no idea there was a book about this, and I'm dying to read this now. I gotta
One
start
book that I
saving
always
up.
refer to students that I have is because it's the editing, but it's In the Blink of an Eye by Walter Murch, and that has a little bit of. It's not quite the same as what you're saying with this one, David, but it's got a little bit of that, and it only costs $5 on Amazon.
Yeah, that one's cheap. I got it sitting on my bookshelf right now.
Spike's got he's got the market on this.
There must just not be a lot of copies of this book or something. I don't know.
And I'm sure it's out of print too. Yeah, it's got to be.
Thanks for joining us, David, and thanks for bringing insight, man. It's good to see you. Yeah. First off,
you too, man, for sure.
And I really hope that things get back into the proper mix for you, so you can get out of this damn quarantine. How's the documentary coming? I saw the clip that you sent.
Yeah, we were gonna film at an Ironman in Ireland in August, but obviously that's canceled now. So that's getting moved to August of next year. So between now and then, we're just gonna kind of reassess things. We reassess what we can do over the next year. Still have a lot of interviews to do. My dad's neurologist has agreed to be interviewed, so we'll interview him as soon as we can. Hopefully soon, hopefully within the next few months. It'll just depend on, when things open up. But my brother is at home right now with my mom and dad up in Portland, so he's going to do a lot of filming while they're quarantined, hanging out. Just kind of because people with MS, immune stuff, they're trying to, kind of stay put too. So stressful, but nothing's really, it's a huge climax for a documentary, really. It's a huge plot point, getting ready, doing all these other races. Then all of a sudden COVID hits, which I'm sure will be the plot point for plenty of documentaries over the next 5 or 6 years. But
yeah.
But for ours, it'll work out.
Unprecedented times.
Yeah.
This is David, Alan, and Gabe with the Tame Aperture podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody. Go check us out at tameaperture.com for previous episodes and also to give suggestions on future episodes. This is tameaperture.com signing out. Thanks, everybody.
Tame Aperture podcast is produced by Dutch Angle Pictures in association with Studio B Productions. Listen, watch, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and YouTube.